This week, the war leaves the peninsula and goes almost everywhere else. First thing this week, Colonel John Hunt Morgan of the Confederacy begins a raid. With almost 900 men, he leaves Knoxville. His goal is to capture Union stragglers, destabilize the local government and administration, and make Major General Don Carlos Buell's supply situation untenable. Also on the 4th, Independence Day. But unlike last year, Lincoln keeps to himself. He watches a procession of War of 1812 veterans, listens to one of their speeches. He then returns to the White House to do some work. But this work is unlike any other. From the Confiscation Act to Fremont's emancipation to the recent bill regarding enslavement in the territories, Lincoln has to play politics. He writes feverishly and rewrites. This might be a draft, but it has to be presentable. Lincoln wants and needs this. It's been balancing the questions of centuries, and it needs to end. Last thing on the 4th, promotions all around. McClellan's division and corps commanders are all promoted. On the 7th, a battle in Arkansas near Cotton Plant. Major General Samuel Curtis and his 10,000-man army of the Southwest are moving down south using the rivers of Arkansas. He is currently on the Cache River waiting to cross. He sends out men of the 11th Wisconsin, 33rd Illinois, and 1st Indiana Cavalry to scout ahead. They number over 600 men. The Confederates wish to hold the Union at James Ferry, where the Union currently is. They have 5,000 men to do that. They only send out 1,000 men from 2 cavalry regiments, the 12th and 16th Texas. Colonel Hovey, who commands the brigade that the Union's forces come from, orders Colonel Harris of the 11th Wisconsin to enter a forest in skirmishing order. They soon come to a clearing and spot 20 Confederate cavalrymen. The Indiana detachment engages and by surprise hits 3 Confederate cavalrymen. 11th Wisconsin then comes in to finish off the small detachment. When they hear a loud burst of fire, the rest of the 12th Texas is too close. Colonel Harris is actually wounded. The 12th Texas then charges the 11th Wisconsin, which is forced back. And then the Union's artillery is open for the Confederates. Except for one man. Sergeant Edward M. Pike comes to the rescue. Captain Potter, a Union officer, asks for volunteers to retrieve the guns before the Confederates get to it. Pike charges down the road, picks up the cannon, and drives back down the road with it. He's awarded the Medal of Honor.
Who was as colossal in courage as he was in size, rushed to the gun, seized the trail, and tore down the road with the cannon as if it had been a baby wagon.
The Illinois regiment moves to hide in a nearby cornfield. The rest of the Union falls back. The Confederate cavalry is in quick pursuit when a volley is unleashed from the cornfield. It was a trap. Then, the 17th Texas Cavalry is sent to encircle the Union forces, but reinforcements scare it away. The Union then conducts an artillery barrage of its own. The Confederates are forced to withdraw. It was a Union victory. Not big in scope. Heck, Arkansas is not even that major of a battlefield, but it is clear and clean. The Union lost 6 killed and 57 wounded. The Confederates lost 28 killed, 72 wounded, and 4 missing. Major General Curtis gets to move further down. More of Arkansas will fall. Same day, an argument in Congress. Radical Republicans are arguing with more moderate Republicans for a potential amendment to a bill. The Union has taken rebellious territory. The administration of this territory can't remain purely military. Thus, the need for provisional governments have arose. The scope of their power, though, is up for debate. Senator Charles Sumner, a radical Republican from Massachusetts, speaks first.
I cannot consent to that amendment. It seems to me that it is going very far. A government organized by Congress and appointed by the President is practically to enforce laws and institutions, some of which are abhorrent to civilization. For example, I have before me a law of North Carolina. It reads, "Any free person who shall teach any slave to read shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, shall be imprisoned, fined, or whipped." Sir, the bare statement of the case is enough. It is impossible to consent to any such thing. In organizing these governments, all we can do is protect life and property and generally to conduct the machinery of government. We cannot go further and protect institutions which are an outrage to civilization.
And then from Senator Ira Harris, New York, and a more moderate Republican.
Mr. President, the object of the bill is not to change the legislation of the states. It is to establish a temporary government to execute the laws and constitution of the rebel states during the interval that may occur between the time when the rebellion shall be suppressed and when those states shall be able to reorganize themselves shall be restored to their proper position in the Union. During this time, those clothed with authority to govern the state requires some power to legislate. But I should be very unwilling to clothe these officers with power to change the entire body of laws of those states.
And then from Senator John C. 10 Ike, New Jersey, the poster child of moderate Republican.
I oppose this bill. In my view, states in rebellion, as the southern states now are still states of this Union, as much today as they were when they became so by their admission into the Union, and that no act of insurrectionists or rebels can change the legal character or status of these states from that which they were entitled to enjoy prior to the commencement of the rebellion. That to acknowledge any other doctrine acknowledges at least the power, not the right, of secession.
And lastly, from Senator Lazarus Powell, Kentucky, a Democrat.
I have been taught to believe that there was no liberty save in the supremacy of the laws, and I now ask the senator who introduced this bill to show me the clause in the Constitution that will warrant or authorize its passage. I will say there is no such clause.
The argument goes on, and the debate ends when a bill on tariffs is presented. Last week, I told of a civil debate between Senator Cohen and Senator Trumbull. This debate and lack of action shows why the splinter within the Republican Party matters. The war requires legislation, and the lack of unity makes legislation hard, if not impossible. The administration of territory in rebellion doesn't have major events that I can cover week to week, but it is imperative for the war effort, and the slow movement and lack of supplies generals have been complaining about can be partially traced back to the civil administration. One piece of legislation that is getting passed is the Morrill Anti-Bigamy Act on the 8th. Named after the esteemed Representative Morrill of Vermont's 2nd District. Does he pass that legislation? The act first off bans bigamy, the practice of marriage to two people, and it limits the size of churches or nonprofits. Now, longtime viewers will know that I cover disagreements between the Church of Latter-day Saints and U.S. states, or the U.S. government itself. So it will come as no surprise that this act is targeted at Mormons. That is really the only reason this act is passed. People don't like the Mormon practice of plural marriage and wish for it to be banned. President Lincoln signed onto an act like this as part of the Republican platform, but the act has zero funds for enforcement, and Lincoln does not wish to create an unnecessary mess with the Mormons. He won't enforce the act as long as they start the Civil War. The Mormons agree, though they do withdraw 2 regiments of their Nuevo Legion in response to this act. These regiments were protecting telegrams and mail posts, so it's an act of peaceful rebellion to have their voices heard, unlike the threat that many northern papers make it out to be. On the 9th, Colonel John Hunt Morgan has moved into Tompkinsville, Kentucky. He captured 30 retreating Union men, seized wagons, mules, horses, sugar, and coffee. He burns what he can't carry, enjoys the spoils of capture, and then rides off to raid further. The same day, an argument in the Senate over an amendment to the Militia Act, proposed by Senator Grime of Iowa. Not the most radical of Republicans, but no moderate.
I offer this amendment. Be it further enacted that there shall be no exemption from the performance of military duty under this law on account of color or race, but whenever the militia shall be called into service, all loyal, able-bodied male persons shall be called to the defense of the Union.
Then retorts Senator Salisbury of Delaware, a Democrat, noted critic of Lincoln. And while many in the Senate refer to African Americans as people of African descent, colored people, blacks, Salisbury uses harsh words. He has always been against abolition or emancipation, and his political clout revolves around his hatred towards Republicans and African Americans. His use of this language is not only shocking, but his main selling point.
It would have been utterly impossible had this war been really prosecuted for the restoration of the Union as it was, for the people to ever allow the Union to be dissolved. But no sooner did the war commence than an attempt is made on every occasion to change the character of the war and to elevate the miserable to not only to political rights, but to put him in your army. And while this policy is pursued, the Union will never be restored, because you can have no Union without the preservation of the Constitution.
Senator Salisbury has shocked the Senate. The Republicans, for the most part, have been walking a fine line as a party. Abolition without equality. Some, like Thaddeus Stevens, shout equality. Some believe in equality, but know it can't be politically done right now. And some don't believe in equality, but only in abolition. Senator Salisbury has thrown them all in together, and for many, they have to twist messages in order to survive politically. The next day, the Senate agrees to a resolution calling for information regarding the communication between Major General George B. McClellan and President Abraham Lincoln. Some senators are taking sides on the disagreement between the two. Some wish to drive a further wedge for political gain, and some wish to mend the relationship. Good luck. This resolution is non-binding because the military falls under the commander-in-chief's purview constitutionally, but it is a sign to Lincoln that some are losing faith in his ability to handle the military, or in McClellan's ability. Afterwards, the argument over the Militia Act amendment continues, and goes nowhere. Last thing this week, Lincoln in the Peninsula. He sent a letter to Major General Henry Halleck on the 6th, much for the Peninsula on the 8th. During his stay there, he not only talks with Major General McClellan, but also McClellan's subordinates. He hears their dissatisfaction with McClellan. And as he begins his return to Washington, not only does he keep writing, he thinks more of Halleck and less of McClellan. On the 10th, Halleck writes this to the president.
Corinth, Mississippi, July 10th, 1862. The President. Governor Sprague is here. If I were to go to Washington, I could advise but one thing. To place all the forces in North Carolina, Virginia, and Washington under one head, and hold that head responsible for the result. H.W. Halleck, Major General.
Then there are Sickles. Last week, Hooker accepted Sickles as a friend. This week, he's a drinking partner. As they wait at Harrison's Landing, Hooker's tent becomes a place for whiskey to be shared and stories enjoyed. Sickles, forever the socialite, lets his imagination and energy run wild, bringing levity to the party. It is not only Brigadier General Daniel Sickles and Major General Joseph Hooker, but Major General Phil Kearny and Brigadier General Thomas F. Meagher, both proud Irish Americans who enjoy the taste of spirits. They drink and grow close. The bonds of friendship start being melded together. And that's where the week ends, and it ends with a return to normalcy. I have been doing this show for over a year, and there are certain things I've come to expect from a week. Arguments in the Senate, Confederate raiding, small battles with a few regiments, displeasure among generals. The last 2 weeks were outliers, filled with big battles. This week is the slow march of war, where things are happening, but without the loud roar of hundreds of artillery guns. Where there is maneuvering, not of divisions, but of congressmen. Happy 4th of July. Hello, it's the entire Civil War Week by Week team here, and I'm pleased to announce I have created a Patreon. I'd like to thank Kevin Mack, who has already joined it. It means the world to me. I'm not saying that you should join. This entire production will go on without. It's just if you have the money, and only if you have the money, and you would like to give it to me, I would gladly accept it and forever be in your debt. Now for the normal things. If you liked the video, please like it. If you want to tell me how much you liked it, please comment. If you want to check out what has happened last week, you should be seeing that around now. If you really want to understand the war, you should be seeing a playlist about it right now. Thank you all, and I shall see you next week.